The thing about wrestling that I've always said is, like, not only is it the best base for MMA, because if a guy can dictate where the fight takes place, that is the most important aspect of fighting, and you can learn everything else. But it's like the mental toughness that wrestlers have.
Joe Rogan breaks down how wrestling has evolved into a dominant force shaping modern UFC fights. Meanwhile, wrestling has always been a cornerstone of MMA, producing elite athletes with NCAA, world, and Olympic accolades. But lately, the UFC roster lacks that depth. Chael Sonnen points out just how thin the wrestling talent has become at the highest level.
That's true. And then as a wrestler, I can see it as even thinner because we do not have a single NCAA champion under contract. Now I'm using, in fact, here, let's back off of that. We don't have a single NCAA All-American under contract. Generally, we would have world team members and Olympians. We would have world medalists and Olympic medalists. Generally, we would have Olympic champions. We do not even have an All-American.
After highlighting the lack of NCAA and Olympic-level wrestlers in the UFC, Sonnen turns to the heavyweight division. With legends retiring, the roster lost its last top collegiate wrestlers, creating an opportunity for rising stars like Josh to quickly make their mark.
And the night Stipe retired is the night that the last heavyweight who participated in the NCAA tournament, the heavyweight class, was there. Now, at long last, Josh has arrived. So everything's going to be fine, but getting Josh his run, getting him his time, I think he can fast track it better than anybody. I just want to bring it to your attention that trying to guess what's going to happen at heavyweight is very hard to do.
Building on the discussion about wrestling's role in MMA, Joe Rogan emphasizes why it remains the ultimate foundation. He explains that success in the octagon requires not just skill, but a combination of tools, mental toughness, and relentless conditioning that only wrestling provides.
You got to have everything, man.
There's got to be a lot of tools.
Yeah.
A lot of tools.
A lot of tools and a lot of fortitude. The thing about wrestling that I've always said is, like, not only is it the best base for MMA, because if a guy can dictate where the fight takes place, that is the most important aspect of fighting, and you can learn everything else. But it's like the mental toughness that wrestlers have, the ability to grind out those practices, the conditioning that's involved in wrestling. It's above and beyond, I think, all other sports.
Building on Joe Rogan's view of wrestling as the perfect MMA foundation, Gable Steveson explains how top fighters are evolving. He shows that success now requires blending elite wrestling with striking, cage work, and strategy to become a truly complete next-level MMA competitor.
I think it's a next-level thing, and then you see in UFC right now, the guys that are dominating and winning are kind of putting that wrestling base first, but making it MMA wrestling. You know, I feel like when a lot of D1 wrestlers come to MMA, they kind of don't make the switch of how to take the right shot and how to finish the right shot and how to use your feet to trip their feet out on the cage. And if you get stuck in a guillotine, how do you move from that spot? And I think you see the guys that are doing it best, the Islams, the Hamzats, are really going out there and attacking and making sure that people can understand that, hey, you got to fear this. And then next, I'm going to come with the hands. And so I think that's the biggest thing that we're working on now is that I've wrestled my whole life and I've done great things and won the Olympics and multiple national championships. But I think the main thing is going out there and understanding that you are that bad dude. But when you show them hands, now you have to respect both. And I think that's where a lot of this is going to come into play when I finally get to that point of reaching that competition.
Turning to Islam Makhachev, Joe breaks down how the fighter has evolved into an elite grappler. He explains that while early in his career, takedowns were a challenge, Islam has now reached a level where only top-tier opponents can truly test him.
Less of a problem certainly now than early in his career. Like if you see his first fight with in the UFC with Michaelitis, he gets taken down the first round. That's not going to happen now, and if it does, he gets up. You know, it's different. But it gets up against who? Does he get up against a guy like you? You know, there's different levels, right? You really saw that with Jack Della Maddalena in Islam, right? There's levels. And when you got a guy that's at Islam's level, that's just a super elite grappler, unless you've faced that before, you don't know what to prepare yourself for.
I tell people all the time.
That's the thing with Petr Yan. He had been in there with Merab for the first fight, and so he knew what to expect. And he'd seen all those crazy fights. He saw the fight with Sandhagen.
After breaking down Islam Makhachev's dominance and elite grappling skills, the conversation naturally shifts to recognizing his achievements. Henry Cejudo and Kamaru Usman begin discussing the 2025 pound-for-pound awards, highlighting Islam as a top contender for Fighter of the Year.
We're going to get into the 2025 pound-for-pound awards. Henry, would you like to kind of start us off with the first award that will be handed out, Henry?
Yeah, of course, man. So, Male Fighter of the Year for 2025. Is it A, Merab Dvalishvili, B, Islam Makhachev, or C, Petr Yan?
Following recognition as a top pound-for-pound fighter, Islam Makhachev reflects on his recent bouts. He explains how fighting elite opponents helped him improve his strategy, confidence, and control over 5-round fights.
Не знал, как будет состояние на 5 раундов, не знал я, как буду себя чувствовать вообще в бою, как будут мои силовые показатели соперника, как я буду чувствовать. Из-за этого бой чуть был таким скованным. Но я думаю, в последующем я уже знаю, что я на 5 раундов смогу с любым подраться, я буду чуть больше рисковать, чуть по-другому вести бой.
Breaking down Islam Makhachev's technical mastery in the octagon, Gable Steveson highlights how Islam forces opponents to think on multiple levels. He explains that combining strikes with wrestling keeps fighters off balance, making it extremely difficult to predict or counter his moves.
What if he can outbox him? But it's hard when you got to worry about so many things. Exactly. And I think Islam did a great job of showing the leg kicks, making Jack switch.
Oh, yeah.
Jack didn't really push forward, and Islam, when he did, shot the double, or he shot an outside single. And it's hard. It's hard when you got to think about so many things.
After highlighting Islam Makhachev's skill in controlling opponents on multiple levels, the focus shifts to another rising star in MMA. Joe Rogan reflects on the heavyweight division, noting its current lack of depth and the extraordinary potential of the young fighters entering it.
That kind of speed is crazy. Like, that kind of speed and incorporated with elite wrestling is crazy. I'm like, the heavyweight division is so shallow right now. You got Tom Aspinall, Cyril Gane, John Jones if he chooses to fight again, Francis if by some miracle they can work something out and bring him back to the UFC. Other than that, there's no one compelling for like a championship caliber fighter. There's basically 4 or 5 guys on earth that are in this like championship caliber class, and you're already there, which is nuts, and you haven't even fought in the UFC yet. When I watched you move and I watched you fight, I was like, okay, how do you stop that?
Turning to Islam Makhachev's upcoming challenges, Khabib Nurmagomedov reflects on the team's remarkable run of victories and training camps. He highlights the momentum building toward Islam's next big fight, framing it as a historic moment for both the fighter and their legacy.
Islam, Usman, Umar, there is other guys too who win. We win 7 more fights. It was in September and October. And we last 2.5 months, we win 10 professional fights. And now biggest fight in history on our team is coming. Islam gonna fight for the second belt, you know. This is what we call father's plan, you know. And I think I'm doing good. I'm doing not bad. Everybody winning, everybody on top, and it will be beautiful things when next week Islam will win welterweight title in Madison Square Garden Arena. It's biggest arena in the world, you know, and we're fighting for the second belt, and you know, I can't wait and for this legacy fight. And I really believe Islam can make this history.
From Joe Rogan on wrestling's rise to Chael Sonnen on the thinning talent pool, it's clear a strong wrestling base is crucial. Rising stars like Josh and Gable Steveson blend wrestling, striking, and strategy, while Islam Makhachev exemplifies mastery, showing skill, adaptability, and mental toughness that define today's UFC champions. Who do you think is currently the most complete wrestler in the UFC, and why? Drop your thoughts in the comments.